Hi Hodinkee, my name is Ryan Montoya. I'm a family medicine physician and comic book artist, and today I wanted to talk to you about my Zenith Chronomaster Revival Manufacturer Edition. So, I wanted to tell this story in two big parts. The first part, and what you need to know about me, is that I'm a planner. This extends to every part of my life, but certainly when it comes to looking at and buying watches. So usually my pattern is to research and learn about a watch for months or years, agonize over the purchase, save up money for the watch, and then when I actually decide to buy a watch, I tend to wait at least 6 months. If I still want that watch after 6 months, I know I really wanted to purchase it in the first place. Think about it as a kind of first world version of writing an angry letter and waiting 3 days to send the letter. So I'd known for years that I'd wanted a Zenith El Primero, but I couldn't find the right reference. Some of the editions were beautiful, but they were a little bit too big. When Zenith started coming out with the Chronomaster Revival series, I knew I was heading in the right direction, because here were some pieces that were 38 millimeters in steel, vintage styling, but brand new. So it's something I could form my own history with. When they announced on the anniversary that they had found these blue prototype dials, I knew this is exactly the watch I wanted. So everything was going according to plan. I had completed my research, I had saved up enough money for the watch, and I'd initiated my 6-month waiting period. Halfway through my 6-month waiting period, the watch sold out online. Now, the second part of the story that you need to know about is that my wife and I have tried to start a family for a number of years, and she has had a number of complicated pregnancies. In 2017, my wife became pregnant, and we soon discovered that it was actually an intra-abdominal ectopic pregnancy, and it had to be surgically removed. We were actually living in Mumbai at the time, and we had to be medevaced from Mumbai to Singapore, and kind of frighteningly, I was deputized to be her medical escort. So it wasn't fun, and it was, pretty serious, but thankfully it all ended well. In 2019, my wife got pregnant again, and after about 20 weeks of gestational age, it was discovered that the pregnancy and that our daughter had what's called anencephaly. Okay, that means a partial formation of the brain. The part that connects the two hemispheres was not forming, and because of that, there wasn't enough fluid around the baby. It was also discovered that the baby had triploidy, which is a triplicate copy of all of its chromosomes. Both of these conditions are incompatible with life, and so unfortunately we were compelled to terminate the pregnancy at a very late stage. Now in 2020, my wife got pregnant again, and after about 8 weeks gestation, she had a miscarriage, unfortunately. But she still had nausea and vomiting, and after a few weeks, we knew that we had to do another pregnancy test. She turned out to still be pregnant, and what had happened was she was originally pregnant with twins, had miscarried one of them, and the other pregnancy had survived. Add on to that the fact that she was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, which requires an early induction of labor. All this added up to a very complicated pregnancy. And this is the context of my wife's pregnancy in 2020. By the way, when I review my wife's OB history with medical students and residents and attendings who were taking care of my wife eventually, their eyes would get bigger and bigger and bigger whenever I told the story. And just as a general rule, it's not a good thing when medical professionals are excited about your history. Boring is better. So, what on earth does all of this have to do with this watch? Just a few days before my wife was due for her induction of labor, I got an email from Zenith. It was a form letter saying that this watch had become available again, available for purchase online. Now, to a normal,
non-neurotic person,
this should be great news. The watch that you want is available. But I was concerned because I still had 3 months left to wait on my self-imposed waiting period before I allowed myself to purchase this watch. Now, my wife was probably sensing my first world problems dread, and probably for the sake of her sanity as much as my own, she made a proposition. And she said she would subsidize half the cost of this watch if I made the decision to buy the watch on that day. It's a really lovely predicament to be in. Here's my wife concerned about giving birth to our first child, and all she's doing is making sure that I don't have to worry about buying a watch. But even in my head, I was still consumed with the idea of whether or not I could hold on for 3 more months before purchasing the watch. I agonized for it for about 6 hours, and then I decided, what am I doing? I'd love to have this watch, and I felt so happy that my wife was kind of going along with this. That day, we purchased the watch. It arrived 3 days later from Switzerland, and 5 days after that, my daughter was born, happy and healthy, at George Washington Hospital in DC. I really love the El Primero. The El Primero means the first. I just realized that. But I love this specific watch because of the story that only this watch can tell. It reminds me that after all my hemming and hawing, I ended up getting this watch, one of my dream watches, even if it wasn't exactly how I planned for it to be. It reminds me also of my wife and my complicated pregnancy history, but how we ended up exactly where we wanted to be eventually. I'm happy that this watch specifically commemorates not only one of the happiest moments in my life, the birth of my daughter, but it also celebrates and reminds me personally of all the difficulties before we got to this point. There's some romantic alternate version of this story where everything goes according to plan. There's no pandemic. I wait to purchase this watch after traveling to Switzerland and visiting that famous Charles Vermeaux attic in the Zenith factory with my family in tow. And I'm certain that experience would have been lovely, but not nearly as meaningful as the reality of the situation, as the reality of watching my wife give birth to our child while having to wear a surgical mask. I'm very excited to introduce my daughter to the world of mechanical watches, so that I can pass down this Zenith as soon as possible. It'd be wonderful for her to be interested in watches, and for us in general to have more women interested in this arcane and esoteric hobby of ours. And more importantly, it'd be great to keep the story of this watch going. So thank you so much for listening to that long-winded story, Hodinkee. Please keep these My Watch stories coming. They've been very enjoyable. Please stay safe and have a good day.